Hotaru Oraki walked through the school gates on his first day of high school. Students crowded the entrance and kept handing out flyers while loudly calling new students to join their clubs. Hotaru ignored all of them and kept walking straight ahead. He changed his shoes and went to class. He had no interest in joining any club. In fact, he had no interest in doing anything unnecessary at all. If something did not need to be done, he would not do it. If it did need to be done, he would finish it quickly and move on. In class, his friend Satoshi greeted him with his usual energy. Satoshi was Hotaru's oldest and only friend, and he understood very well how little Hotaru cared about normal school life. He tried to get Hotaru interested in the new school year, but Hotaru stayed completely expressionless. Satoshi then asked why Hotaru was still at school, since he usually left as soon as classes ended. Hotaru gave a tired sigh and handed him a letter. Satoshi opened it and saw it was from Hotaru's older sister, who was traveling in India. In the letter, she explained that the Classics Club kept losing members every year and was now close to being shut down. Since she had a strong attachment to that club, she begged Hotaru to join and keep it alive. Hotaru cared enough about his sister to agree. Satoshi pointed out that it would be easy because the club had no current members, which meant Hotaru could have the whole room to himself. That small idea made Hotaru feel a little better. After that, he left Satoshi and went to the staff room to get the key. The Classics Club room was in a quiet corner of the school, far away from the busy hallways. Hotaru liked that right away. He put the key into the lock, opened the door, and stepped inside. There, he found a girl with short black hair standing near the window and looking outside. She turned around and walked toward him. She introduced herself as Eru Chitanda and said she recognized him from the school entrance orientation. Hotaru did not remember seeing her there at all. Eru explained that she had joined the club for personal reasons and asked if he was joining too. Hotaru told her no. Since she was already a member, the club no longer needed him to survive. So he turned around and said she could lock the room when she finished. Eru stopped him right there. She said she did not have the key. Hotaru froze for a moment and looked at the key in his own hand. If she did not have a key, and the door had been locked when he arrived, then how had she entered the room? Eru tilted her head and calmly said the door had been open when she came in. She had no idea how it got locked afterward. Her curiosity immediately grew stronger, and she asked Hotaru to help her solve it. At that moment, Satoshi appeared at the door and admitted that he had followed Hotaru just to see what was going on. Hotaru tried to leave again, but Eru grabbed his hand and leaned in close as she asked for help one more time. Something about the look in her eyes hit him in a way he had never felt before. Because of that, he stayed. The three of them started thinking about possible explanations. Eru mentioned that she had heard a strange clinking sound earlier. They listened carefully and soon heard that same metallic sound coming from below. So they stepped out into the hallway and saw the school janitor moving from room to room, locking doors with a master key. Hotaru quickly figured it out. The janitor had probably checked the remote club room, assumed no one was inside, and locked it without realizing Eru was there. The sound she had heard was the master key turning in the door. Eru had been so focused on the old school building outside the window that she never noticed. Now that the mystery was solved, the three of them walked together toward the shoe lockers. On the way, Satoshi decided to join the Classics Club too. Hotaru still insisted he was not joining, but Eru took his hand again and directly asked him to become a member. Without saying anything else, Hotaru handed over his application card. Just like that, he officially joined the club. The next afternoon, Hotaru stayed after class because he needed to rewrite an essay he had forgotten to bring from home. Satoshi sat nearby and started telling him about a strange rumor spreading around school. That morning, a girl had walked past the music room while rain was falling outside. She heard classical music coming from inside, even though the room was dark and the door was closed. When she opened it, no one was sitting at the piano, yet the music kept playing. Then, once the piece ended, a figure slowly rose from the floor with messy hair and red, tired eyes. The girl got terrified, slammed the door, and ran away. Hotaru kept writing like he did not care, but then he asked one thing. He wanted to know if the story had already spread around the school. Satoshi said yes. Hotaru immediately guessed that Eru would show up very soon and asked them to investigate it. So he grabbed a small piece of paper, quickly wrote something on it, and told Satoshi to get ready to tell a different story. Just as expected, Eru arrived a moment later, full of curiosity and ready to talk about the music room mystery. But before she could get into it, Hotaru redirected her towards Satoshi. Satoshi then told her about a secret group called the Silk Spider Society. He claimed that no one knew who its members were, but every year they secretly placed a hidden flyer somewhere on the school bulletin board. Eru's attention changed immediately. Her curiosity moved to that new mystery, and she asked both of them to help her find the flyer. They went to the main notice board on the first floor. It was covered in colorful club posters from top to bottom. After carefully checking the board, Hotaru pointed out a small notice hidden behind one of the larger posters. Eru looked at it closely, but her reaction was not as strong as before. She said the mystery felt too easy and still had some weak points, but she accepted it for the moment. After that, the three of them went their separate ways. While walking home together, Satoshi asked Hotaru when when he had made the fake flyer and slipped it behind the poster. Hotaru calmly admitted that he only did it because he did not want to go all the way to the music room on the other side of the building. Then he explained the real answer. The student who used the music room often slept there to save time. She kept the window shut and used a classical music CD as an alarm. When the music stopped, she would wake up. So the girl who opened the door had simply seen that pianist getting up from the floor after sleeping there. Satoshi then asked the real question. Was Hotaru avoiding the mystery just to save effort? Or was he unable to refuse Eru the way he refused everyone else? Hotaru said nothing. A month passed since Hotaru joined the Classics Club, and he slowly got used to a quiet routine. Most afternoons, he sat in the club room with a book and a cup of tea, while Eru sat across from him reading her own book. Sometimes, she brought homemade sweets and quietly placed them on his desk. Hotaru liked those peaceful days the most. One afternoon, Eru closed her book and stood up. She told Hotaru that the club felt too inactive because they never really did anything together. Hotaru told her to sit down and reminded her that this was a literature club, not a sports club. But Eru shook her head and brought up the coming school festival. Every club had to take part in it. Hotaru said he did not care, but Eru kept pushing. She explained that the Classics Club had a tradition of making an anthology every year for the festival, and she wanted to keep that tradition alive. Hotaru refused right away because the work sounded like too much trouble. Eru did not back down. She told him clearly that she would ask him about it every single day until he agreed. Hotaru thought about it and realized that helping her once would take less effort than listening to her daily requests. So in the end, he gave in. He then asked if she even knew how to make an anthology. Eru honestly admitted that she did not. Her idea was to find older copies and learn from how previous members had done it. So the two of them searched the club room together, opening drawers and checking shelves, but they found nothing. Hotaru sat back down, but Eru told him they were not done yet. She pulled him out of his chair and took him to the school library. At the front desk sat a short-haired girl named Mayaka. The moment she saw Hotaru, she recognized him and made an annoyed face. She warned him not to cause trouble. Hotaru replied with a dry comment, which only made her more irritated. Just then, Satoshi appeared from between the shelves, and Mayaka's expression changed right away. Eru quickly noticed that change. Hotaru quietly explained that Mayaka had liked Satoshi ever since middle school. Satoshi greeted everyone warmly and introduced Eru and Mayaka to each other. Eru wasted no time and asked Mayaka if the library had any old copies of the Classics Club anthology. Mayaka said she had not seen them on the normal shelves, but they might be in the back archives. Only the head librarian could allow access there, and that person had not arrived yet, so they had no choice but to wait. While they were standing there, Satoshi asked Mayaka to explain the strange pattern she had mentioned earlier. Hotaru quietly tried to head for the door, but Eru's curiosity was already caught, so he stopped and stayed. Mayaka then explained what she had noticed over the last few weeks. Every Friday during lunch break, someone borrowed the same book from the library, and before the day ended, that book was always returned. Since students were allowed to keep books for 2 weeks, returning it the same day made no sense at all. She brought out the book and placed it on the counter. It was a thick, leather-bound history book about the school. The cover looked old and elegant, and Eru picked it up and said it looked beautiful. Then Mayaka showed them the borrowing record, and that was where it got even stranger. Every Friday, a different girl had borrowed the same book. 5 different students over 5 weeks, all from the same year, all doing the same thing. Hotaru looked over the record and noticed that the checkout and return times were very close. No one could possibly read such a thick book that fast, so he said it clearly. The book was obviously not being borrowed for reading. For a while, they all threw out different ideas. Mayaka guessed the heavy book might be useful as something to lean on. Satoshi joked that it could be used like a shield. Eru suggested that a book that large could help press pickled vegetables. Hotaru got tired of hearing them and told everyone to be quiet so he could think. He looked at the records again and noticed that every borrower was a girl, and each one came from a different class. He then suggested that the book might be used as some kind of signal, but Mayaka explained that returned books were placed back on shelves randomly, so that idea did not work. Then Eru brought the book close to her face and smelled it. Mayaka stepped back, surprised by that. Eru said the book had a faint smell of paint. Mayaka tried smelling it too, but she noticed nothing. Hotaru paused for a moment, then asked Eru to come with him. He led the group out of the library and toward the art room. On the way, he explained that there was an elective class held every Friday that brought students together from different class sections. It was the art class. When they entered the room, easels were lined up everywhere. Almost every unfinished painting showed the same thing, a girl holding a book with a dark textured cover. Hotaru pointed at the canvases. The leather-bound school history book had the perfect shape and color to be used as a prop for figure drawing. Since no one wanted to carry such a heavy book all week, each student simply borrowed it on Friday and returned it the same day after class. Mayaka and Eru stared at the paintings, then turned toward Hotaru with open admiration. After that, they returned to the library. Hotaru started heading for the exit, but Eru reminded him that they still had not found the anthologies. At last, the head librarian arrived. Satoshi introduced the group and asked about old issues of the Classics Club anthology. The librarian checked and then told them that none were left in the archives. Eru's face immediately fell. Satoshi told her not to worry because they would find another way to get the anthologies. After that, everyone went home. The next morning, which was Sunday, Hotaru's phone rang early. It was Eru. She apologized for calling on his day off and asked him to meet her. Hotaru tried to refuse, but she kept asking until he finally agreed. Later, he sat in a small cafe waiting for her. When Eru arrived, she was a little out of breath and apologized for being late. Hotaru asked what she wanted. Eru hesitated and tried to change the subject. Hotaru stood up to leave, but she stopped him, made him sit back down, and told him that she had something important to say, something she had struggled to admit. EP03 Hotaru sat in a small cafe with a cup of coffee in front of him. He slowly stirred the cream and waited. After a while, Eru arrived late. She wore a nice dress and looked slightly out of breath. She sat across from him and ordered something. Hotaru asked why, and she looked down at the table before quietly saying that she had something to confess. Hotaru fell silent at once. His chest tightened as he waited for her next words. Eru still circled around the topic for a bit, then finally told him the truth. She wanted his help solving a personal mystery. Hotaru stared at her in surprise, because that was not what he had expected at all. Eru then told him about her uncle, Sekitani Jun. 45 years earlier, he had gone to the same school and served as the president of the Classics Club. But 7 years ago, he traveled to India and disappeared. People searched for him, but no one ever found any trace of him. Eru explained that when she was small, she had been very close to him. He used to spend time with her, take her to parks, and answer all her questions. He was patient, intelligent, and kind, so she admired him deeply. She also told Hotaru that he reminded her of her uncle because of the way he could think through problems and find answers that other people missed. After that, Eru described the memory that kept troubling her. When she was still a child, she once asked her uncle something, but now she could no longer remember what that question was. Instead of giving his usual gentle answer, he said something that upset her so badly that she started crying. Her uncle did not comfort her. He just sat there quietly and looked troubled himself. In the end, her mother came, carried her to bed, and she cried herself to sleep. That moment affected her so deeply that her mind sealed it away. She could not remember what she had asked or what her uncle had said. Hotaru listened to all of it without interrupting. When she finished, he refused. He told her that bringing back this memory might change the way she saw the world, and he did not want to carry that kind of responsibility. He suggested that she ask other people or slowly figure it out herself during the next 3 years of high school, but Eru shook her head. She said she had already gone to the staff room and spoken to every teacher, yet none of them had worked at the school long enough to know her uncle. She also said that this matter was too personal for her to discuss with just anyone. She trusted Hotaru because of the way he thought. Then she added one last detail. Her uncle had been missing for 7 years, and the family was preparing to hold a funeral soon. Before saying goodbye to him for the last time, she wanted to remember the words he had once said to her. Her voice became softer, and she looked down at the table as she tried to hold back her tears. Hotaru watched her quietly for a moment. Then he said he would help, but he made it clear that he would not take responsibility for whatever effect the truth might have on her. Eru's face brightened right away, and she thanked him. Soon after that, midterm exams arrived, and club activities stopped for a while. Hotaru spent those days studying and going to school, so he barely saw Eru during that period. When the final exam ended, he went home and dropped onto his bed. There, on his desk, he found a letter from his older sister. He opened it and read it. She wrote that she was currently stuck in Istanbul at the Japanese embassy because of a passport problem. In the letter, she asked how the club was doing, whether any new members had joined, and reminded him again about the yearly anthology tradition. Then she mentioned something important. The old anthologies were not in the library or the archives at all. They were stored in a wall safe in the club room. She also added that the safe was unlocked. The next day, the club gathered in their room, and by then, Mayaka had officially become the 4th member. Hotaru shared the contents of the letter with everyone. At first, they felt relieved, but when they looked around the room, they realized there was no safe anywhere. Hotaru told them not to panic. Club rooms changed every year. Since his sister had graduated 2 years earlier, the safe would be in the room the club had used back then. He had already asked around and learned that the biology lab had served as the Classics Club room the year before. The group walked down the hallway toward that lab. On the way, Hotaru noticed 2 small sensor devices attached to the walls on both sides of the corridor, but the girls did not seem to notice them. When they reached the door, they found it locked. They knocked, and after a moment, a long-haired senior stepped out and kept the door mostly shut behind him. A strong smell of cologne came from him. He introduced himself and said that the newspaper club now used the room, although he was the only one there that day. Eru politely explained that the Classics Club was looking for a wall safe that should still be inside. The senior suddenly grew tense and claimed that he had never seen any safe there. Mayaka reminded him that students were allowed to inspect the room if needed. The senior hesitated for a moment, but then he let them inside. Hotaru looked around carefully. Papers were spread over the table. A radio sat near the edge. The window was open and a fan pointed straight at it, even though that setup could easily blow the papers away. The group searched the room, but found nothing. Then Hotaru asked the senior if he had moved anything large when the newspaper club moved in. The senior said he had shifted a few cardboard boxes. Hotaru then calmly said that if they could not find the safe themselves, he would ask a staff member to search the room properly. The senior's face changed at once. His breathing became heavier, and he told them to leave. Hotaru walked out with the girls and told the senior that if the anthologies appeared, he could just leave them in the Classics Club room. Not long after that, the anthologies were sitting in a neat pile on their table. Mayaka asked Hotaru how he had figured it out. He quietly pulled her aside and told her to keep it secret. Then he explained everything. The sensors in the hallway, the fresh cologne, the fan aimed at the open window, and the radio on the desk all pointed to one thing. The senior had been smoking in the room. Since he came from a respected family, getting caught would cause serious problems for him. That meant the safe was most likely where he had hidden his cigarettes and lighter, which was why he refused to reveal it. The moment Hotaru mentioned staff, the senior had no choice but to hand over the anthologies himself. Just then, Satoshi walked into the room dressed in a sunflower costume, and Mayaka showed him the recovered books. At the same time, Eru pulled Hotaru aside. She held up one of the volumes. The title on the cover was Hyuka. She told him that this was the anthology connected to her uncle. Inside, a text written 1 year after he had left school described him as a hero who sacrificed everything for the greater good. Eru pressed her hand to her forehead and said she felt like the answer was